All right, here we are with Hannah Norwick from Polaner Selections. Thank you, Hannah, for taking the invitation. This is a series that Deb and I started a few weeks ago, which is we're trying to do some virtual tasting as well as some, conversations. And since now we have to, I guess, or our life all of a sudden went on a high speed online. One of the good things is, we can connect with people from all over. And since pretty much everybody's at home, it hasn't been that difficult to, to book someone to talk, about wines. So you are our first virtual tasting from different places. And well, Hannah is one of our favorite rock stars rep. Well, that's what I tell all my closest rep. But yeah, so we've been working with Polaner for pretty much since the beginning, right?
Yeah, it's almost, it's since you guys opened the store. It was
Right.
before you opened the store, so yeah.
Correct. So so we have an amazing I guess portfolio, or part of your amazing portfolio. Thanks to you, we've discovered some really good wines, some actually wines that have good prices, good quality, and yet with a nice story behind each bottle, which is what we at DVINO look for. We're not, as you know, we're not wine geeks. We're not we're just wine lovers that like to hang out and be with people that know about wine. And also, one of the premises we had at the store, since we wanted to have since we opened, was to educate people, like sort of bring open up the knowledge and the how to, when it comes to how wine is made, and also what are the tastes like that we can look for. So far it's been great. People love to talk and hear you guys talk when we do the tastings. So that's why we want to continue this. We miss being at the store, of course, being three times a week with tastings, and having you guys just talking to our customers, which they love, and I'm sure they all miss you. So we're gonna try to bring this conversation to the small screen. Okay.
Cool.
All right. So it's rosé season,
It
and
is.
it's getting warmer. It's getting nicer outside, and people started, asking for rosé. So so far, it's still kind of early in the season, but we got three really delicious wines from you. So I'm going to show you what are they. But why don't you tell us a little bit about rosé? What's the deal with rosé wines?
Yeah, so I think it's really fun, the selection today, because we were talking about this earlier. I'll talk a little bit about how rosé is made, or the three main ways that you can achieve rosé wine. And actually, these three bottles today represent all three of those methods, which is super fun and quite cool. Rosé has been around for a really, really long time. We're talking about Greek and Roman times, but they wouldn't have referred to it as a rosé wine. It was just like a lighter red. And you don't really see popularity of rosé hit any kind of like fever pitch or getting momentum until really like after the year 2000. 2004, we start seeing it maybe being in some restaurants, and now we just have this like uptick in popularity from there. There was some really bad associations with rosé drinking in the United States because of things like white Zinfandel and wines like Lancer, which is totally fine if you like these things, but the association for people from the 70s and 80s was that rosé meant sweet wine, and it kind of did in the US for us in our experience for what was in the market and what was widely available, but in places like Provence and in the Mediterranean, light pink wine was like aperitivo, drunk in the summer, great with seafood. They were not sweet wines. They were brought over from the Greeks, from the Phoenicians, and so this history of like light wine drinking had been there, and as we start to import more of it with Kermit Lynch, our taste change, and you have great somms who start introducing it to restaurant lists, which is so great because oftentimes you can be exposed in a restaurant, and then obviously like retail shops can sign on and we can start, you know, educating people. And so now rosé is like the craze. We all want to drink rosé. And there's many different styles. And I think it's great that today you have 3 awesome styles from 3 producers who all farm at different levels of organics. And yeah, so it's pretty cool.
I wonder if that whole, you know, rosé bad idea, you know, that now we see as a bad idea because, you know, there were sweet wine, just, you know, sweet wines, which is, you know, that's a whole nother conversation. There's people who still is very, you know, suspicious of sweet wines, but there is something interesting about sweet wines that we might talk, you know, in a different time. But anyway, I wonder if that was sort of a marketing strategy to get the, you know, the pink wine or that, you know, light wine into the market, because maybe, you know, something, I don't know if it was brought as it is, as it's being drunk, you know, in Europe, maybe it wasn't accepted. It wasn't, you know, going to be accepted by the consumer.
I think that more than like it being a marketing tool in this case, you know, if we talk about the history of rosé wine and you talk about it from like the perspective of people who are not just wine drinkers and consumers, but people who think about wine and talk about wine, they weren't necessarily thought of as like wines to spend time on. So if we're talking about wines to enjoy like they were in Provence or you were in the Mediterranean, they were delicious, but it was like, have this with your dinner, you know, that like, or have it in the summertime. And so they were delicious and drink now and not necessarily wines to be thought of for aging. And so then in terms of like export, the first rosé wines that leave France and leave the European market to come to the US happen to be sweet examples. And I don't think it was a marketing tool, but I do think they were the first pink wines to enter the market. They're actually from Portugal, which is what Lancer was. And so that's the first. And then in California, one of the methods of making rosé is basically a byproduct of your red wine. And so those just happen to be sweet. And so I don't think that they were like, ooh, this is going to be a great way to sell this idea. It was more of like, here's a way to make a little bit of extra money with this byproduct. And they happen to be sweet because they were leaving residual sugar. Fermentation didn't go all the way to dry wines. So between that happening in California and those wines coming from Portugal, they just happen to be sweet wines that were first associated with when we're talking about rosé entering the scene in the 70s and 80s. If you're talking about back in the day in like the 17 and 1800s in Europe and in England, they're drinking dry, not sweet rosé. And so they have a different association than us in America. And we're sort of only recovering from that recently.
Right.
So,
interesting. Yeah. Okay, great. So, all right. So I'm just sharing the you know, the 3 wines we're going to try today. Secret Identity, which is from California. Pomponette, it's Provence, you know, French wine, and Touraine, which I don't think we've had a Touraine wine, I mean rosé before. So what are we starting with?
Let's start with Pomponette. So lucky me, I also have a bottle with me. So as Neil said, Pomponette is from Provence. So in many ways, you could say the birthplace of rosé, right? Like they really have a culture and a history with rosé. It's not a byproduct wine in Provence. It's a wine that actually, like kids in France, they'll put a little bit of rosé, like it may be their first tastes of wine as kids. It's really part of the fabric and the culture, the experience of being in the Mediterranean. So the producer for Pomponette is Soulaz. And Soulaz is the type of soil. It's limestone. So literally the name of the producer means like on top of the limestone. So they've got great soil type here. It's pretty classic. It's a blend of grapes. Traditionally, Provençal rosés are blends of grapes. For some reason today, some wine drinkers think a blend means not as good or cheaper wine. This is a total fallacy. I don't know where it comes from. I'm quite confused by it, to be honest. So blending is not bad. It's excellent. This is mostly Grenache, which is a red grape. with some Syrah, Mourvedre, and Cinsault. And then it's got a little bit of Vermentino, which is a white grape, or roll, as they call it in Provence. White grapes will give you beautiful aromatics, acidity, and they can add some lift to the wine. This is a producer, it's a husband and wife team. She's Brazilian. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know.
They met hiking in Corsica, and they essentially saved a collective of vineyards that were a co-op in Provence with money from the government to rehabilitate those vineyards, and they farm biodynamically, so no chemicals used. They use moon cycles. They also have the first biodynamic beer hall in Provence. I believe it's all of France, which is pretty freaking cool. So there's no chemical additions while they're making this wine. They do a little bit of sulfur, but it's natural from volcanic sulfur after bottle. But yeah, I mean, I've just talked a lot, so we should taste, because I can tell you all that. Well, it doesn't taste good. Who cares? This is probably our most popular rosé in the Polaner book. I think this is for a couple reasons. One, the color is like the color we want to see in rosé, right? It's that perfect pale pink, maybe a little bit orange. It doesn't look watery. I think they've nailed the blend. I think that this is a wine that every vintage, like, we're pretty confident it's going to be utterly delicious. And, you know, you're talking about a wine that's made with all this thought about the land. And those are always good things. If you're farming, like, winemaking starts in the vineyard, right? So, like, they're nailing that. This is a wine, not to get too nerdy, but it's made in the classic Provençal method, which is called Sonnier. So when they make the wine, they basically make it the same way you would make a red wine, where they leave the grapes on the skins and let them get color from the skins and the juice, but they take some of the liquid out of the tank before it turns fully into red wine. And that liquid that they pull from the tank is called Sonnier Method, which means to bleed. So they're bleeding the wine out of the tank to keep it pink. And then this sees aging in stainless steel, so there's no wood. So it's all about this, like, freshness, the blend, and the place where they are in France. So yeah. Cheers. Are you gonna drink with me or no?
Well, I actually, it's funny, I don't have the samples with me. You have them, but I will. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this, you know, I'm gonna watch this with a glass of Provence. I mean, you know, Pomponette and try. But so what is it about Provence? I mean, Provence is being known as a region, you know, every time more and more as it's being recognized as a rosé wine region. What is it about Provence? Is it the terroir? Is it the culture of a pink wine, or what is it about Provence?
I think that it's a mixture of all those things. So, like, you know, like I was saying earlier, you have the first sort of written about history of pink wine starting in Provence. So they bring, you've got the Phoenicians bringing over a style of wine with them to this region, and it's light red wines, pink wines, and so it immediately catches on. Also, if you're looking at where we are, you can see it's super Mediterranean. You're on the water, right?
Right. I'm just showing a map right now, so you can...
So everything about this region, culturally, we know that rosé is like drink fresh, drink young, super pretty. It's bright, it's refreshing. You want to have it with these foods that are of this area. You want to have it outside. It's hot there. It's coastal. The wine pairs beautifully in that way. So culturally, I think, like, they bring this style of wine over from Greece and Rome, and it sticks and it stays the entire history of this place. And if those vines and style wouldn't have worked for the area, it wouldn't have stayed. We know pretty much across the board that what the Romans did and planted have to this day remain the greatest wine growing areas from the times they planted those vines. If certain varieties or styles didn't work, they wouldn't have charted the course for like hundreds, thousands of years. Like, it's crazy, right? So this place has a history that says to us, this style, it works well for the grapes, it's delicious, and it works well for the lifestyle. And so in many ways, as the Rosé fire caught, we look to Provence to provide tips and guides for the style of the best pink wine we can drink, rosé wine. So it's the birthplace of rosé in many, many ways. And so it's a benchmark. That's not to say bad rosé doesn't come from Provence. Because you can make not great wine in many places, and Provence is not excluded, but you can also find the most classic and beautiful examples. So like, to me, Pomponette is that. And I have to say, this is a 2019 vintage. So that's the current vintage. The year is 2020. These grapes were grown in the year of 2019. They would have been picked probably like sometime in August. Some could have been September. It's quite hot there, so they don't need to wait to ripen the grapes. And then, you know, you're gonna press, you're gonna ferment, you're gonna age, and then it goes in a bottle. So if you think about this, like, this wine just arrived to us. Who knows what month it is right now? It's April. This wine arrived in March, and so that's not that long, right? It's like, drink now. I think this is showing beautifully. I hadn't tasted this yet. This is normally a wine that is really hard to get your hands on, and because of current circumstances, it's pretty lucky that there's more accessibility right now, in lieu of many things happening.
Right.
Yeah.
We're so, you know, we're so happy and lucky, I guess, to carry this wine and to offer it, you know, at our shop. It's, you know, since I think we started last year, right, bringing this
I think that's right. Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a very popular wine. And so before we move to the other wines, what would you recommend would be a good pairing for this wine?
So I want to say that here the fruit is very like stone fruit centered. You're kind of in that like more like beautiful peach, maybe some like honeydew melon, lots of gardenia, white flower, tons of salinity. There's a saltiness on the palate. It's on the nose. It's beautifully floral on the nose. There's so much like honeysuckle and white flower. It's a medium body. The acidity is really high. So if you were to think about that, like we talk about that in terms of food or cooking, right? Like I just said all these things that like when you're cooking, that makes for a dish that's super nuanced and balanced, because I just said like it was fruity, it's juicy, it's salty, it's acidic, it's floral. Like there's all these characters going on. To me, this is like a bright and refreshing wine, but it's really balanced and grounded. So it doesn't like make you go like, oh, puckered. You don't get that pain in the back of your ear. Like that badly balanced rosé, or those that come to the market too quickly, can do that. So here, like, you know, any kind of seafood, oh my gosh, shrimp with this would be so delicious, or like clams and linguine. I actually think you could pair this with some really nice cheeses, salmon. You could definitely go the poultry route, like roasted chicken. I mean, the other thing that's great about rosé when it's good is like, who needs to pair it with anything? It's like a great aperitivo. You could have it with fruit. Like it's so versatile. And to me, in the truest version of Provençal rosé, this is like 10 out of 10. Like it's exactly your expectation. 2019 is kind of blowing me away right now. Like the vintage is super, super good. So it's like everything you want from rosé. Plus you've got the added bonus that like there's nothing added to this. You're supporting small farmers. Yeah. I
mean, it's a whole package, and that's, you know, that's also important to know, like that again, you know, as I said in the beginning, we're really fond to the idea of, you know, telling a story behind each bottle, like what, you know, who's the people, why they make it, what was the relationship with the, you know, with the product they're making, and you know, and the terroir and the soil, that, you know, the respect for the fruit, because, you know, at the end, this is, you know, this is not it's not something you're doing in a in a factory. It's just, you know, it's a combination of nature and mankind just, you know, working together. So yeah, so this is a beautiful wine, and you know what, I'm craving for a glass right now. So cheers. Okay, so what are we doing next? What's the next one we want to try?
Let's stay in France and do
Okay.
Francois Chidin.
Okay. Going to Touraine.
Yeah, from the Touraine. So Touraine is a area in the Loire Valley. So we're going north and west of where we are in Provence. So the Loire Valley is known for, I mean, I think the Loire Valley is one of the greatest value wine regions that you can have in your back pocket and know about. You can see here, we're focused in on it. So if you started on the west side, you're very coastal. This is where you get Muscadet, which is a white style wine that's like great with oysters, super high tone, so refreshing, which makes sense. As we move inland, as we move east, you have less of a coastal influence. You have the Loire River. That's why the region is also known as this, the Loire Valley, that unites the whole thing from west to east. And here we've gone into Touraine. So you're more in the like orange area, and you're almost as far west as you can go before you start hitting more like the Sancerres and Sauvignon Blanc. So you're by like Courchevelny, exactly like right here. I'm pointing, but we can't really see. So pretty far east in that orange area. So you're in a warmer area that's more central. You have whites and reds that come from here, and rosé. And this producer, Francois Chidin, is so freaking cool. I can't speak highly enough about the work that he's doing. So he's another biodynamic winemaker and farmer. And beyond his biodynamics, he's a regenerative farmer. So he goes even further to not till his soils. He doesn't turn the ground at all. And so he's actually sequestering or keeping carbon in the soils. So he is positively affecting climate change by creating more CO2, by creating less carbon emissions. He's a wonderful person. His work is incredible for the world, and like is an important voice right now in current times. So it's quite cool. Also with him, his wines are delicious. This is interesting because this is one where you guys have a 2018 vintage. So it's great to talk about because like I was saying earlier, a lot of rosés hit the market too soon. There's this rush and need that people need the rosés for spring. And a lot of times there's a capitalistic push rather than a push for quality to get wines to the market. And it's not always a good thing. So here's an example where like you can find excellent rosé often for less money because you bought the vintage before. It's good to talk to whoever's running your wine store at DVINO because they're not going to buy something from last vintage unless you guys know that like the wine is excellent and was good enough to stand that test. Really cheapy rosés, I wouldn't recommend going back a vintage. They're probably not great to begin with. They're not going to get better. Right. But here, this wine is so beautiful. It's a blend of 3 grapes in the 2018 Gros, Pinot Noir, and Gamay. These are grapes that Francois is growing specifically for the rosé. So where I talked about in the Pomponette that they bled the wine because they took some out of the tank to keep it pink, and then they make a red wine as well from the wine left in the tank. This is a wine they make to be rosé. So they macerate, they put the grapes in on the skin. They don't leave them there for long, not as long as you would with a red wine because they want the juice to be pink. And that's what they're doing here. That's the style, and this is the method they use to achieve that. I think that you get a little bit more body on this wine. I don't have it to taste, but I'm very familiar. It's a little bit more medium bodied. It's a little bit more in the like red cherry, red fruit vein. It's still so bright in its acidity. You get maybe some more tea notes to this wine. Maybe a little bit more umami, maybe some tomato plant. a more savory kind of style, but really great, like candied strawberry, not sweet, but you get that like strawberry candy kind of vibe, some watermelon, some red cherry. Here, in terms of pairings, I think you can always feel safe going seafood, salmon, you know, these associations we have. But here I'm like, oh, you could go roasted pork. You could do this with like a spicy sausage or andouille. Like go into like braises. You could really have some fun and play with spice. Like get some spices going here. This is a rosé with more fruit and red fruit character, and so it will play really nicely.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we actually had this wine recently, and I do remember, you know, like having this, as you said, like this kind of medium body kick. You know, it's not as light or as, I mean, it's still refreshing, but it's got, there is more going on in the, you know, in the palate. Like it's a bit more, you know, it's got a little bit more of a punch. And I always wonder, like, okay, this is one of the wines, this is the type of wine that you can get out of a safe area and go a little, you know, a little stronger and probably, you know, match it with, you know, as you say, pork, or, you know, like you can cross the line. You know, there is always the general idea of white wines being good for, you know, fish or white meat, and then, you know, big bold red wines, you know, with meat. But this one, I think, can, you know, flirt with both sides, and it's a delicious one. I don't think I ever had either a blend, you know, that kind of blend, Grolot, and you know, Pinot Noir and Gamay.
Yeah,
it's it's delicious, a delicious wine.
Yeah, it's cool because Grolot is often grown in the Touraine, in the Loire Valley, specifically to make rosé. So I love about this wine that, like, it's a very conscious choice to make the rosé, right? The rosé is not a byproduct of something else. He's making this wine with this blend purposefully to be rosé. And so I love, like, the way you're thinking about it, because if we were to think about rosé on a spectrum somewhere between white and red, and we're to think about the abilities of wine in that category, this one to me, like, epitomizes that, because what does a pink wine mean for you at dinner or during a meal? Like, if you were to think you start with a white and you build to a red, if this existed somewhere in the middle, the possibilities are endless, because it could be great to choose for a dinner because those pairings are so huge if you live in the middle of those two things. And I think this wine is, like, categorically that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting to say too, like, you can kind of see the color here, like maybe it does have a little bit more of the red hue rather than the peachy hue.
Yeah.
Still quite light. This area, as in comparison to Provence, we're not on the coastline, you're not on the sea, you're on the river, but you're further inland, and so it's a little warmer, and the style of the food and the lifestyle is different again. And I feel like those personalities come through these two wines in really exciting ways.
Yes, so. Same country, different regions, different profiles, and yet, you know, like a big, I guess, a spectrum in between both. You know, like they're both, there is a warmer side of the Mediterranean, but there is also the kind of warmer side of the inland. You know, in the area of Touraine. I actually had the opportunity to, I don't know if I told you, I was, you know, as you know, I play music. I was playing at a festival in France back in early December. And then we drove down from where the show was, about 2 hours, to the Loire Valley, and went inland to, you know, Tours, the town of Tours. We met with a musician that turned into winemaking, which is kind of a dream, no? He bought this property with, you know, with a cave, like, you know, the whole area, because, you know, people have been making wine for ages. So most houses that are by these slopes, they are built in, you know, natural, you know, cellar.
Right.
And that was amazing. That was amazing. And just being there and, you know, breathing that, you know, area, you know, understanding the gist, like how it works, you know, with the ambient, and how they get, you know, he's making sort of natural wines too, where are, you know, you know, there's indigenous cheese from the area. Anyway, so that was a beautiful experience. I wish I knew this wine before. Probably would have gone and stopped by.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the last one we're trying today, it's now we're going all the way to California. This is one of my favorite wines and one of my favorite labels.
Yeah.
the secret iconic or
So it's really fun. Again, like I feel like these three wines are such a journey to talk about. And if we were talking about sort of the movement of rosé and it getting to the United States is sort of like only very recently us coming around, it's kind of cool to finish with a California producer in line with that. So here, Burke O'Halloran is the guy behind Iconic. He does all of these awesome female superheroes on his labels. He uses actually local artists from New York. And when the winery first started, when he first started the label, he would trade bottles of wine for the comic book art for his labels. He's a super big comic book fan and nerd. And he thought that like unapologetically, he wanted to make wines that were like very Californian, very American, and very much who he is, but while taking all of this like knowledge and experience from, he was a sales rep, worked in restaurants, worked as a somm, like everything he'd learned, all his winemaking, and have that all come into it. So he feels like comic book art is the closest to like the true American art form, that like it starts here. And it's a great representation of that, similar to his brand. So I love this wine. I love the look of the bottle. I think the look of the bottle is super playful. You got like an Alsatian style, long, thinner style bottle like you might find in a Riesling bottle, an Alsace. I think that's super fun and interesting. The label's super fun and interesting. And I think that's what the wine is. Like, I think this is, of the three, the most sort of playful of the bunch. So here we're into the third style of rosé making, where you would actually blend white wine and red wine to get pink wine. And some could say that's the lowliest method to make rosé, which generally speaking would be true. But here it's a choice that's very purposeful, and not because it's more easy, it's because it's a stylistic choice.
Why would it be the lesser? I mean, why would it be in the sort of a lower?
I mean, I think
it's an easy technique, or
yeah, and historically it could be considered like a cheaper method. It's one that's like not allowed in certain regions. Like in Provence, you can't put the appellation of your rosé if you achieve the pink wine this way. So it's got a bad rap. However, it's worth mentioning in all wine. The reason we can talk about wine for days and people get paid to do this is there's never a 100% rule, which is what makes it hard to learn so much. So like generally speaking, it could be considered like that method is less respected, but in this case, it's not. It's a choice.
Right.
And the choice is that for this wine, because this is mostly Chenin Blanc, which is a white grape. And it's because he wants the style of that white grape, that white variety, to be present in his rosé. And it's because the red grapes here, many of them are old vine, big varieties, Zinfandel and Carignan from these amazing vineyard sites. So here, this is a blend that is dictated by these vineyards that he's wanting to work with, and then blending the wine in harmony to achieve the style that he wants, from as far north in California as Mendocino down into like by Sacramento into the Sierra foothills. So you've got a wide berth, and it's not because he's buying bulk grapes, it's because he's specifically wanting to blend certain vineyards. So yeah, so you can see Mendocino is far in the north. If you look into the pink area of Sonoma, if you know where San Francisco is on the bay, if you went east of that, that's where some of these grapes come from. And then we've gone even further south into like Sierra foothills. So there's like a wide span. This is just a map of the North Coast. So some of these vineyards are south of the North Coast as well.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. But just to show a little. But yeah, they source wines from different vineyards. I saw that in their profile.
Yeah, and this would be one where the farming is both organic and sustainable, because they're coming from different vineyards. Some of the vineyards have certifications of organics. Some of them are practicing. So again, like it's easy to want to categorize with one thing and say like that's bad or good, but there's nuances to this. But everybody's practicing sustainable or organic farming in all these vineyards.
Yeah, this is a delicious wine too. I mean, I guess you know, we've tried many wines, and some of them are not necessarily our favorite ones, and of course, you know, we don't necessarily judge by our own taste. There are wines at the store that are my least favorite, but a lot of, you know, customers' favorite. This is again one of those wines that people love. We love. You know, the label is great. It's, you know, it's made here in the U.S., which you know, it's also, you know, it adds to the fact that, you know, we support, you know, local producers, you know, as local as Brooklyn, or, you know, Norfolk, or Finger Lakes. But yeah, so now, besides the fact that they come from complete different regions and complete different, you know, the ones we tried today, would you think, like, just thinking about these three wines, would it be this one sort of in the middle between the Provence and the Touraine? Because I feel it doesn't have, I mean, it's refreshing as the Provence one, and it has a little bit of body, but not as much as the, you know, the Chilene.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's fair to say that. You know, I think absolutely, without question, the Pomponette, the Provençal, is by far the most like bright, floral, quite pretty, quite refreshing on the like higher tone. Like I said, more peachy, stone fruit, lighter color. And then I think like Chidan and the Iconic are a little oilier and fuller. I think the Chidan, I totally agree with you, like is more red fruited. And so you get this like rounder, maybe more medium body fruit. This to me though, texturally is actually the most texturally medium body. So what I mean by that is like, there's like an oiliness to this in a pleasing way, like in the same way that if you like ate, let's say like curry with coconut milk in it, the way that like it would coat your palate and stay, like there's a textural quality to this wine. And I think there's like, it's interesting because on the nose and in the beginning when you taste, I think you're in the like honeydew melon, lots of melon, some like peach candy. Then you get this like waxy apricot-y honey thing, and on the end I get all the like blackberry tea notes that I know Zinfandel brings, and I can taste it. So I think you're totally correct that this would be somewhere in the middle, but there's an interesting like availability to play with food with this wine because of a texture thing, and Chenin Blanc is such an amazing grape for like bringing texture. And so you get that in this wine. Don't be mistaken. It's not creamy. It's not like buttery. There's nothing about that that's there. But there's a, almost like if you ate almonds and you have that like oily texture in your mouth. There's that quality to this wine, which I don't think the other two have.
Right. Yeah. That makes it very interesting though. Hannah, thank you so much. That was so much fun to, you know, talk with you about this wine. We miss you at the store. I'm gonna be a little playful here and just pretend that, you know, we are at DVINO. And,
oh my God!
That's how, you know, we've been doing this with all the bottles behind, and you know, we're talking to people. But yeah. So you know, I guess sometimes we'll be, you know, we'll get back together soon. Thank you so much. Be well, stay safe, and let's stay in touch, okay? And
yes.
We'll keep trying wines, you know, this way, and see, and bringing it out to people. For them.
Awesome. I love you guys. I miss you guys. Thank you.
Miss you too.
Thank you,
Hannah. Ciao. Thank you.
Bye.